Lesson 2 of our study of short story is going to take a look at setting and mood. So they are similar, but still different. So setting specifically is the time and place in which the story itself takes place. So we're looking at when, the time, and where, the place of the story. So is it after school at your mom's house? Or maybe it's 1,000 years into the future on Mars. Okay, in both of these instances, we're looking at a time, so after school or 1,000 years into the future, and a place, your mom's house or on Mars. Lots and lots of different options here, so keep your mind open in that sense. Mood, on the other hand, is the feeling that is conveyed to the reader. So sometimes the setting plays into the mood a little bit. So if our story is taking place in a wartime, we could maybe assume that the mood isn't going to be very happy and cheery. Again, you'd have to read the story to find out. So the mood is the feeling that is conveyed to the reader. So how do you feel when you read the story? Is the author or the characters trying to make you happy, angry, sad, apathetic, curious, or any of the other emotions that you can think of? Now, a way that an author might convey setting and mood is through the use of figurative language. So in order to help establish the time and place and mood, an author might use figurative language such as hyperbole, similes, metaphors, and imagery. You'll notice in our class we have a bunch of posters at the front that have the definitions for many types of figurative language. In today's lesson, we're just going to focus on these 4. So a way that an author may show the setting of the story and the mood as well is through the use of imagery to represent objects, actions, and ideas in a way that appeals to our physical senses. So as you know, we have 5 physical senses, one being visual. So visual imagery is going to describe the image the author wants you to see through what you can see. Okay, so he or she is describing it in a way that appeals to your sense of sight. So we're looking maybe at color, size, anything that you can see. Next, they might use auditory imagery. So that describes the image through what you can hear. If you're maybe walking through a park, you might hear birds chirping. So the author might describe that so that you can hear it, and it helps you create an image of what's going on in the story. Next, we have olfactory imagery, and this describes the image through what you can smell. So if the story takes place in a garbage dump, the author might describe all the putrid smells that you're getting around you. We also have gustatory imagery, and that describes the image through what you can taste. So maybe the main character is biting into a freshly baked croissant, and how is that going to taste buttery and soft? And then you as the reader hopefully kind of get that feeling yourself. Last but not least, we have tactile imagery. And tactile imagery describes the image through what you can touch. So maybe the character's petting a nice soft kitten, so it's going to describe the way the kitten's fur feels. And again, hopefully as the reader, you kind of get that feeling and you relate it back to your own experiences with kittens in your life, and you make a connection to that character and to the story. We also want to look at 3 other pieces of figurative language. So one is the simile, okay? And a simile is a comparison made between 2 things with the use of a connective word such as like or as. So an example from one of my favorite movies, Forrest Gump, at the top we have life is like a box of chocolates. Okay, so in that quote, Forrest is comparing life to a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Okay, so life is like, we have like there. It's comparing 2 things. It's comparing life to chocolate. It is therefore a simile. Next, we have metaphor. Now, very similar to similes. Okay, try not to get them confused. A metaphor is a direct comparison made between 2 unlike things that actually have something important in common. Okay, so like a simile, again, we're making a comparison, but a metaphor does not necessarily use like or as. Okay, so an example might be he is floating on a sea of grief. What's important to know about a metaphor is it's not literal. So we misuse the term literally. When you say literally, that means it is actually physically happening. So if you come to school and say, oh, my brain literally exploded in math class, it was so much work, that would mean that pieces of your brain are all over the walls right now. Okay, so literally means it actually happened. So a metaphor is not literal. So can someone actually, literally, physically be floating on a sea of grief? No, because a sea of grief isn't a real thing. So a metaphor helps the reader kind of visualize and understand what's going on through the story in a different way. So if someone is floating on a sea of grief, we can assume that they're probably sad. Okay? Next, we have the hyperbole. And a hyperbole is an extreme exaggeration used to make a point or to stress an idea. Okay, so basically it's an exaggeration. Example being, I've seen this film 1,000,000 times. Have you actually watched Forrest Gump 1,000,000 times? Or maybe you've just watched it like 20 times, which is a lot, so we exaggerate it to be 1,000,000. So in order to study setting and mood in class tomorrow, we're going to read Little Fish by Kim Kitson, and that's on pages 87 to 102 in Give Me Shelter. What I want you to do is find one fact about the Vietnam War for class tomorrow. I've included a couple informative videos following this one in our playlist. You can also check out the short story unit resource section of our class website for a few websites that you can take a look at. Okay? I'm asking you to do this ahead of time because it's going to help us define the setting and get more background information on what we're going to be reading tomorrow, which is Little Fish by Kim Kitson. So happy reading and watching, and I will see you tomorrow.